You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
All right, we're back for another installment of the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. We have my friend Dr. Paul Bregman in the studio today. We're going to be discussing a lot of interesting things in the news. Some fun, some not so fun. So thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you very much. It's always good to be here.
Yeah, so there's a few things in the news today. Or not just in the news today, but, in news in general. First of all, let's talk, the good. So the good is, we can actually do the good, the bad, and the ugly today, I think. The good being that the first municipality-sanctioned cannabis club is slated to open very soon in Netherland, Colorado. So Netherland is a nice little small mountain town. And they have now have their first club. I think it's called Club Ned, I believe. So that's big news. I mean, we have cannabis clubs right now in Colorado Springs. There's about 4 down there, but they're not actually sanctioned by the city, and they're actually pushing back on Studio 64 down there. Our friend Casey Stark is down there, and he's already fought the first level and won the appeal against the City Planning Commission, but now City Council of Colorado Springs could fight it. But the good news is that the first sanctioned club is opening in Netherland. So, hats off to the cats out there in Netherlands for getting that going.
That's a very, very big move, and these are just beginning of the part of the tsunami of things and social change.
Yeah.
That's just reflecting also in the business, the
Yeah.
social change that's coming along. So hopefully this will not be the last social club like this.
I don't think it will be. I definitely know that there are some others in the works possibly for opening up, but nothing's going to be happening in Denver anytime soon. For those of you who are coming to visit Denver, you've probably heard us if you listen to the show in the last couple of weeks. They're being real, dicks. They're being dicks, let's be honest, about allowing consumption in anywhere in the city of Denver. So we have all these tourists coming into town, buying legal cannabis, but nowhere legal for them to smoke unless they have friends who have a house that they can go visit in the Denver area. We've had events that we've been trying to put on. Marijuana Madness, for example, was supposed to happen just last weekend, and we had to cancel it because it was going to be on-site consumption at Hood Lab.
But there are hamlets close to Denver that could be fertile ground. And that's where we're going to have to look in the beginning.
Exactly. So, there's, one thing I'll say about any of us in the cannabis industry is we're very good at adapting. And, no matter what crazy things the government throws at us, we find a way to work within the system to make something legal and make it good for the people. And I think this is something that is necessary. To me, it's a public safety issue. I don't know what you think about this, Paul, but I mean, if we're having bars where people can go and drink and then drive home after work, and that's never been a problem. I mean, we know it's been a problem, but, the city and the government doesn't have a problem with it, especially the governor, because, he's so supportive of beer and microbrews here that he actually put his own tap system into the governor's mansion to promote local Colorado brews. And at the same breath, he's saying, well, I'm really concerned about the children when it comes to cannabis.
Well, the hypocrisy and also the science is on the side of the cannabis. There was a 10-year study done by a professor here in Colorado as well as elsewhere together that showed over a 10-year period there was a 10% reduction in fatalities related to drunken driving in the medical cannabis states and among 18 to, I think it was 29-year-olds. And they attributed that to the cannabis being used at home, less people on the road, people... and I'm not advocating anyone drive stoned, but certainly many times people are pulled over because they're going too slow and they're more cautious as opposed to, yes, they are certainly impaired in some things, but as far as the aggressivity of alcohol versus cannabis, there's no question about that.
Well, and the statistics on that is pretty amazing. You mentioned 10%.
That was over about 1,200 lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 1,200 lives saved because of legalization of cannabis. But it's 10%. It was that 10% was consistent across the board in every state. It wasn't like an average that was combined. Oh, this state was down 3%. This state was down. Everybody was 10% across the board. So there's a direct correlation to the legalization of medical cannabis. So now I'm very interested in seeing, what's that study going to say about Colorado and then, of course, eventually Washington when they get up and running on the recreational or the adult use side. How much more is that going to drop?
And this is where the research on everything needs to be driven. Social research, numbers have to be kept, and we have to see how things are going because we're at this critical state. The same thing with scientific research. Scientific research, social research, whatever research you need to see. Here is the beginning. We've never had this point. This
no,
before.
I mean, and we are. I mean, I was quoted saying this before. We're all kind of making this up a little bit as we go along because this is a brand new industry. We're feeling our ways through, and there are plenty of dispensaries out there that have been doing their own case studies on as far as healing and things like that when it comes to utilizing cannabis for certain patients. But those aren't necessarily sanctioned studies because it's not being done by a university or by a medical group. So it's going to be really interesting to see the more research that we're able to start having that are sanctioned by the medical world. And there's plenty of research, as I'm sure you could probably cite way more.
There's plenty of research, but it's also using the anecdotal research and organizing that and having a database that people can be on the same page. If you have a study of 20 people or 25 people that have rheumatoid arthritis and you're giving them the same medicine and you know what you're doing and it's not the strictest of standards where you may have a placebo, you can still come away and saying, okay, these people were aided by the use of cannabis and we can also quantify perhaps the range of strains in which they were using as well. This Afghan Kush area, which have 4 or 5 hybrids under it, was better for rheumatoid than this over here. Or we're going to use this sativa during the day hybrid, and we're going to use this indica at night. I mean, so many of those things can be done already.
Now, how do you feel about, there's some states, I would say the southern states like Florida and Georgia right now specifically, that we're looking at legalizing medical cannabis, but only looking at legalizing the Charlotte's Web strain for children with epilepsy. They're actually trying to limit what types of strains to use because they're almost specifically saying, well, we can't have THC, but let's do these CBD strong strains for the children for epilepsy, which is great that that's happening. I would call that progress, but it feels like it's going to be like stilted progress in a way because it's like, okay, well, we've allowed this strain, so now we've medically gone to cannabis.
It's like you have one leg and you're taking a giant step with the one leg, what it is, and you're taking the step with the CBD, which is wonderful because CBD is going to be good for a lot of different things, but it's a matter of education there and their morality and how they think about what THC and what the entourage effect really is all about. And that's where the science comes into play.
Right.
And that's where the education. So I look at this as a good baby step, even after talking to Matt Cook about things, who's also down there working with Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi. I mean, if I would have told you a year ago or whatever, 6 months ago, that we're going to have some form of medical cannabis in Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, et cetera, and they're going to take half the money. They may change because they'll see how much money the THC portion will bring in, and all of a sudden that may drive the thing too. Money really drives the issues.
Money really does drive the issues, and that's one of the things that happened during the last governor's meeting. All the governors around the country got together, and it was one of the things our governor that I'm no fan of, Hickenlooper, basically was telling people, because they were all coming to him, well, tell us about the recreational marijuana. Tell us how this is working. And he's like, everybody hold on, slow it down. Now, if I felt like he was telling them to slow it down because he wanted to make sure more revenue was coming to the state, then I would have no problem with saying, okay, I appreciate that statement. I don't think that's why he's saying it. I think he's saying it because he's still creating this stigma, like he's very worried about, the effects on children, of course, I think we're all in agreement in the industry that we don't want cannabis to get in the hands of children that don't need it, first of all. If you need it for a medical reason, absolutely. CBDs are going to be great for, as like we know, with anybody with like Dravet syndrome or any of those cases. Autism, it's showing promise on as well. But when it comes to, we don't want kids to be just getting their hands on cannabis just to smoke it for the fun of it. That's absolutely not what we're looking for. But I think that to try to slow them down on it and say, because he's worried about the children, that to me it seems very disingenuous. Because again,
it's disingenuous, and I don't mean. I just want to partake with you. Is the idea it's disingenuous only because when you talk about cannabis in these reefer madness terms, like it's all. Of course, we need the educational programs, and of course we know about developing brains, and of course we know these things. But the idea is the big elephants in the room still are cigarettes, still are alcohol, still is prescription drug killing someone one every 19 minutes, the use of opiates, the use of pills in combination by students and younger people in that. Those are much more, if you had graphs, they would be bar graphs that would reach to the ceiling, and the cannabis graph would stay at the floor and just be at your feet. So of course it's disingenuous, but it makes for good press, and this is where we're at this level of evolution of the movement.
And it just shows that, our governing bodies here, our legislators, the leadership in our state is so out of touch with the people's voice. There's just a recent poll that came out. I wish I could cite the source off, but I don't have it in front of me. But where they basically said they listed tobacco, alcohol, sugar, caffeine, and cannabis, and they said which is the most dangerous for children, and the lowest percentage was going to cannabis. Sugar is considered more dangerous by the general population from this poll than cannabis. Cannabis was considered the least dangerous. It was tobacco. It actually came out to tobacco, alcohol, and then I think it was sugar, then caffeine, and then cannabis. And that's kind of going across the board right now. Is the general consensus around the country is that cannabis is safe. I mean, the majority of the country now thinks it should definitely be legalized medically, and I believe the polling numbers are showing pretty close margin of the majority, just over majority is saying, yeah, let it be recreational as well.
And the idea is, I think our state legislatures have while there are certainly certain ones that need more education, on the whole, we have really set the standard for the country and the world. Now, even Uruguay is looking at us, to for the standards, for the rules and regulations and the compliance and what we're trying to do here. So, and now we have to keep the far right wing, the really extremists, from coming in and really tweaking the system so that you're driving people away, that you're just making it so uncomfortable, when still the problems of cigarettes, alcohols, opiates, and pills are the big problem, and they don't want to address that. So that's one thing. But I think the genie is out of. I know the genie is out of the bottle. And now we just have to keep on moving and open up these clubs in a refined way, a regulated way, and just be the leaders that we are. Because Colorado is certainly a leader, and Denver, I feel, has a whole different vibe.
It's really amazing to me, because Denver was considered like one of the more progressive cities when it came to cannabis. Even before Amendment 64, about the decriminalization of having cannabis. Was considered. They decriminalized it. You could hold up to an ounce for what is $100 fine. One of the first cities to do that. But then now. And we were holding events. People were holding events on a regular basis here in Denver. And then all of a sudden, now that it's legal, they're trying to take, that type of freedom away from us. It's amazing to me that they're fighting like they are, instead of just saying, okay, like you said, the genie's out of the bottle. So now that it's out of the bottle, let's just accept the fact that it is, and then make it work within our society. So
you see the confusion within the minds of Hickenlooper and these other people who we're here. They don't want to trust the will of the people. Yeah. It's people in control who don't want to trust the will of the people.
Right.
Let's say where people have moratoriums in their city, Boulder, a year moratorium on rec because they want to see what happens. Yeah. The will of the people said put it in. Who has more control? The city council can go against 60% of the will of the people.
Yeah.
So it's all an evolution. Them fighting a 420 rally now.
Yeah.
Just have the right police, just do the right thing, and embrace it.
And
like Festivus, as opposed to fighting.
I agree.
What is this?
It is too bad. I think that we wouldn't have as much of a fight on the 420 rally if it wasn't for the fact that there was a shooting last year. Now, again, that shooting was gang related, supposedly, although they never did much to try to find who it was. But it had nothing to do with the fact that it was a 420 rally. It has to do with the fact that when you get 1,000 100,000 people congregating in one place, whether it's for alcohol, cannabis, or just for music. Things happen. That happens. But it's not something that you can directly attribute to cannabis. I don't think anybody would ever think they could directly attribute to cannabis because cannabis doesn't make somebody violent. But we have the Great American Beer Fest, and they have problems on a regular basis because of how many drunk people there are running around, getting sick, throwing up, causing fights, because people get belligerent on alcohol. But they don't look at shutting that down. Also, they're going after the 420 rally because I don't think the city makes a heck of a lot of money on the 420 rally. But they make plenty of money on the High Times Cannabis Cup, and you don't see them doing anything to go after them. It's really interesting. Like you said, money is usually where, you follow the money and then
it's just politics. You understand it. You recognize the media. You recognize the whole industrial complex, the whole big thing here.
Right.
And we are just a speck, and we're trying to grow and grow. And we are.
Yeah.
They're not holding us back. We are here no matter what they say. And it's not like we don't want to work with the powers to be.
You're right.
I mean, I bring that up because of the banking situation.
Oh, well, we're going to get into the banking situation.
Fine.
We have to go on a break really quick.
Fine.
So I just got to do a little word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. So now some words from our sponsor, Medically Correct, the makers of Incredibles bars. New things are here from Incredibles. The new Makiba bar is our own special version of a superfood granola bar. It's packed with 20 different nuts and seeds. It's got the protein you need to go, go, go. 30 milligrams of the finest THC is mixed with an extra 10 milligrams of pure CBD oil. This is the bar for those who embody the Colorado Rocky Mountain High spirit. Careful, it is more powerful than it sounds. Makiba stands for My Kind of Bar. Ask for them at your favorite dispensary. So that was our commercial break.
Let me just throw in some scientific.
Please, let's hear some scientific.
With regards, because CBD is big, and this is the science of CBD and THC. Mm-hmm. CBD, if you pre-medicate with a CBD joint, let's say, and you have that in your system, about 15 or 20 minutes later, you partake in a joint of THC or a bowl of whatever. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get high instantly. How CBD acts in the brain is it blocks the CB1 receptors. Mm-hmm. It means it only blocks it. It doesn't attach to it.
Right.
At the same time, the thing about CBD, ironically, is it pulls in more THC across the blood-brain barrier. Yep. So you've pre-medicated with CBD. It's blocking the CB1 receptors in the brain. You follow that up with THC, and all of a sudden you have more THC in your brain than you've had before.
Right.
And so when the CBD starts to drop off the receptors, the THC is going to be there. So ultimately, you may get higher.
You may get higher. You're right.
You may get higher. There'll be more concentration of THC, but the high will be a more rounded high because the CBD's effects will be anti-anxiety.
Right.
So it will be a gentler, but maybe higher high in a way that you haven't experienced if you pre-medicate with CBD.
Well, and I think that holds true when you mix the CBD with the THC, like Incredibles is doing with their Makiba bar. And I mentioned this last week because I got to try their Makiba bar, and it's really amazing. But one of the things that really stuck out, besides the fact that it tastes really good, but was the fact that the high I got from it was so much more pleasant. Not more pleasant like I have a problem with any other high from THC, but it was a different, rounded is a really good word, Doc. To say rounded out is really nice because it was, I was like, well, okay, I feel the THC, but what I feel more is an overall sense of well-being. And that's the CBD kicking in to do that.
That's the natural. CBD is anti-anxiety, anti-pain and inflammatory, but anti-pain mostly. And the people also report this increased focus, this overall sense of well-being because of the decreased anxiety as well. No munchies. And those are the things that it does. The only thing that it doesn't work for, by the way, for the medical condition is glaucoma. Mm-hmm. So a low dose doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. A medium dose will still, but an increased dose of CBD over a certain level will increase the pressure in the
I
didn't
eye. Realize that.
So a lot of people don't realize.
To be aware of.
So it's the contraindicated, really. If somebody says, "I don't want to get high, but I want to treat my glaucoma," CBD rich is contraindicated. It can actually raise the pressure.
Well, and I think that brings up a really good point, Paul, because what you have is when it comes to cannabis is there's so many nuances nuances when it comes to medicating with cannabis that when a legislator comes in and says, well, we're going to allow the CBD strain because we heard you can't get high from it, and so it can get, and they automatically latch onto it and think they can get all the medical benefits because like, well, it's cannabis, so you're going to get this, but you're not going to get high. It's like, no, you don't understand. It's not, there's not one strain that's a panacea that you can use for all the ailments that cannabis can help. You know, it very much is specific to each person and what their needs are.
And that's why we call it the entourage effect.
I love that
within
name,
the
by the
plant.
way, yeah.
That's a beautiful name.
It is.
It's probably a French derivative, and it's just a beautiful thing. The entourage effect of the plant. I mean, P. Diddy has his entourage. You know, I may have.
Well, I was a fan of the show Entourage.
I don't have an entourage.
I'm a fan of the show Entourage, so I'd love to say, well, like,
entourage effect.
So
imagine that effect within.
So you have the
plant.
entourage effect, and then you go, well, wait a minute, which one is Turtle out of the entourage? I want a little bit more Turtle in this.
CBN can be a little
CBN
bit
can be your Turtle,
right?
And you have Eric, and yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But
yeah, you know, the purple strains are going to be the, you know, what's his name, Vince in Entourage, because he's the good-looking guy with literally no substance. So you just say, oh, it's really pretty strain, but doesn't do this much.
But the good thing now is that good dispensaries and even patients themselves can go to Leafly, let's say, or Google, you know, which shows strains and their general effects. And you can try those different ones to see how they affect you. Does this Kush affect your pain the way it's supposed to? Does this Afghan over here? Does this New York Diesel do this? So that's one thing. Or type in different strains for your arthritis or something like that. And we can start to refine that too.
Right.
For people with insomnia, there's a certain, you know, you can use CBD in elixirs and things like that. And there are basic things that are going on now, especially with hemp being able to be transported across state lines. Hemp CBD oil, we'd like to bring down the costs. But CBD is for those people who have ailments and don't want to get stoned, if they can find the right stuff, it's just amazing.
Right. Well, and I think that's, I mean, the next step, the thing that bothers me, I guess, with the legislation, and we're going to talk about, I know we do want to talk about banking, but one of the things I wanted to talk about first was about some legislation that's been going on recently. Like in Portland, they have just banned edibles, sweet edibles, but really, that's pretty much the only kind of edibles they probably have right now because it's the easiest delivery method. You know, I mean, you know, the cannabis is, you know, bonds to the fat and it gets in there. So it's good. I mean, that's why brownies are a good delivery method. There are other great methods out there, but they're saying it's for the children. They're worried about sweets that can attract kids and they can accidentally try it, which I think should be more regulated by the parents. And they should be the ones being responsible for the treatment of the cannabis, just like they would have to be responsible for prescription drugs or alcohol in their home. But then, yeah, put in child safety packaging, which we're doing here, and that's one way to mitigate any damages you could have with a kid accidentally getting their hands on it. So I do understand where they're coming from, like saying, oh, well, we don't want gummy bears because kids look at gummy bears and they think they're sweet and they're nice. But, you know, a good parent would separate those from a place for a kid to be able to reach. But you have these people legislating things like that in Portland. And then we have the same thing going on here in Colorado from our friends, quote unquote, at Smart Colorado, which, again, anything but smart, in my opinion, is how they generally operate. But they keep getting losses because they're so against marijuana, and they keep trying to put all these regulations and bills in. We fought them in the past on regulating where cannabis magazines would be put, and they've lost that battle. And they're now trying to talk about regulating dosages for edibles and how much you can purchase. Like they want to be able to say, okay, this many grams of earwax is equal to this much of an ounce. So we need to limit how much they purchase of that. And they want to do the same thing with edibles on that side as well. And the big thing for me is, and they first were trying to just ban edibles outright like they are in Portland. The big thing I have with these guys is you're talking about, you know, there's all these mothers that are worried about their kids, and, you know, and I understand that, and I appreciate that mothers are worried about their kids, but, you know, to me, parenting starts at home, not in the legislative body. But the other thing is like I don't see a doctor like yourself or like Dr. Bob Melamede or Dr. Alan Shackelford or anybody who has any expertise on cannabis being called up and asked to be advisory on these committee on this legislation. And it's like, again, going back to the nuances of cannabis, it's like, how are you not going to a doctor and saying, help us on how to create standards on regulations when it comes to dosages? Why, or go to the lab facilities and figure out the standards on dosages. No, instead, it's just this lobbying group that's so against cannabis, and they're the ones that get to tell them how to regulate it. And, it makes no sense to me.
These are political. Once again, the way the world works is that many times you have the politicos or the powers to be making decisions, social policy or medical decisions that should be made by the doctors themselves or the people themselves. I mean, another current thing, there's a hearing tomorrow about the plant count limitation and the doctors who write out excess plant count. I mean, that's a big deal for certain patients who make butter and need that. That's a very important call by the doctor.
Yes.
But the other things that you talked about is the government still is comfortable yet uncomfortable with this whole movement and with the whole thing, and until new people are put in place, there'll always be the outliers. Like Smart Colorado will always have something to say that they'll never be able to be satisfied with anything that we do, and the other people, we'll just have to learn also to work with regarding the edibles, the sugary edibles in Oregon. Okay, here's doctors who don't know, not that familiar, who say there are no prescription. You want to be medicine? Fine. There's no medicine on the market that's marketed like a gummy bear or a lemon drop or anything like that. If you want to raise the bar, we want it to be such and such with such and such. And that's where their thinking is coming to protect their kids. And if you look at the stats, it's a solution where a problem, a very small problem exists, and they want to say, okay, there were 14 kids admitted to the children's ER, 2 had to be intubated, compare that to cigarettes, alcohol, or pills, or anything like that, and that's where we're going to focus this specifically. The whole thing that we keep talking about is always we get fucking carved out selectively by the IRS or the business. Nobody wants to let us grow and just be the right person that we are and bring out from the underbelly and charge the right people on the rec side, because I'm for all rec, but not when you're charging $500 an ounce.
Well, no,
$400 an ounce.
Yeah.
And yes, you're doing what you have to do. It's business, and
it's supply and demand right now is what it is.
Right, and we're doing, with regards to that, but people are still on the street supporting other people.
Absolutely.
But I think recreational is wonderful. I think it's good for the city. I think it's good for the state. There's a whole different vibe here.
Yeah, there is.
But to get rid of sugary edibles in Portland or Oregon, it's just a matter that the doctors are uneducated and they want to err on the side of saying it's medicine. There's no medicine that looks like this except maybe vitamins.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not incorrect in saying that, but there is also no other medicine like cannabis. I mean, even in a flower form, there's no medicine that looks like that. You're not going to go anywhere and get a prescription of tea leaves or anything like, So, I mean, I think the big thing that they need to recognize is it's a unique substance, and they need to start treating it that way. The big complaint I have here in Colorado is Amendment 64 was the regulate marijuana like alcohol amendment. And there's no way, shape, or form that it looks like it's being regulated like alcohol.
They're doing the best that they can. You're absolutely right. And the key thing is it's really coming together, and it's slowly evolving in the fact that that we have rec, that we have a thriving medical community, that research is beginning, that people can get this information they never got before, and it's spreading out to other states. And I'm looking at the glass very half full.
Oh, I am as well.
And I know you are. And the idea is the legislatures, you're always going to have the Smart Colorado, and it's just like those people who say that gays shouldn't marry or anything like that, or whatever. Women in the army.
Well, and it was one of those things like when you said it, they're creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. The best analogy I can think to that statement is, the voter rights acts that they try to pass all over the country when they're like, oh, well, we're worried, and it's always from the right side, the conservative side are like, well, we're worried about voter rights and voter fraud. And they're like, well, how many instances of fraud have there been in your state in the last year when it came to voting? And it was like, oh, well, 2. Oh, so you're going to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to regulate something when there was maybe 2 violations of that. And when we all know that the reason why you're doing, these voter rights acts is to like keep minorities out of the voting poll in your state so that you have a better advantage in your election, upcoming election. And it's similar to that. It's a very similar analogy. It's like you're trying to create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. And the only reason why you're creating that solution is because you have some lobbyists that are favoring you or giving you money or whatever it is politically to fight these things. Smart Colorado being that one. And people who fund Smart Colorado are the ones who would benefit if the governor got what he wanted when it came to his budget proposal of $100 million. $85 million of that was going to substance abuse prevention in clinics and advertising and things like that. Well, most of that is going to the same people that fund Smart Colorado because they're funded by rehab clinics and facilities. They're one of the biggest fundraisers for them.
We want, and they don't want to hear us when we say we want rules and regulation. We want education programs for the children. Mm-hmm. We want to protect the children as much as you do. And so we want to work with you. Let's develop them together and have real people going in for real lectures to the school. Yeah,
you're right. One more thing I want to say before we go to a break. I talked to one of my very good friends, Miss Wanda James, who's always very in touch with what's going on politically. And it was one of the things on the governor's proposal. He wants to spend over $3 million. I think she said the number was 3.7, but let's just say $3 million because that's more than enough, on a website for education on cannabis. $3 million for a website.
Much needed, money well spent. It really, I think, sets the tone because I'm a big educational advocate, and you could really set the standard for the world.
Well, you could, but here's my problem. All right, I own a business. I have a website. My website's probably going to be a little bit more complicated than their website as far as a news source. We're relaunching in April 1st, so everybody check that out on April 1st. But, our friends over at Weedmaps have a very complicated website that takes a lot of time and money and effort to put into. And I know how much it costs to build a website. And that's where I get upset on this $3 million website. What's considered a really sexy website costs about anywhere between $25,000 to $100,000 to put together.
Then your point is so well taken. But again, we get back to the reality and the fact that this is the government, and you're absolutely right.
$3 million.
You're absolutely right. When it should be $100,000.
If you're spending $3 million on a website on cannabis, that website should be able to clean my bowl for me.
Well, I'm saying so. A good site should be $250,000.
If you said $250,000, I'd still be like, "Wow, you're okay. You're government. You're going to spend way more money than you're supposed to spend." But $3 million is absolutely insane. It really is. So anyway, on that note, we do have to go to another break, and we'll be back in just a moment with Dr. Paul Bregman.
Cannapunch is a delicious and effective medical marijuana beverage proudly made right here in Colorado. Each bottle is freshly infused with 100% pure flower extract from the highest grade marijuana plants available today. Using proprietary extraction methods, every bottle of Cannapunch is consistently and reliably infused with an exact milligram dosage that you can count on to relieve your symptoms each and every time. Cannapunch is delicious. There's never any medicine-y taste. We use only 100% cannabis flowers. No trim or byproducts are ever used in Cannapunch. It does not require refrigeration and comes in convenient, resealable multi-dose bottles from 60 milligrams to 200 milligrams. We have drinks with dosage that works best for you. Cannapunch is available in a variety of delicious flavors like black cherry, watermelon, pineapple mango, and blue raspberry. And we now have strain-specific beverages available just for you. Cannapunch is delicious, convenient, consistent, and effective. Give it a try and experience the Cannapunch difference.
Independent Records and Videos has been your locally owned and operated choice for music, movies, and lifestyle accessories since 1978. Independent Records and Videos has 7 locations from Denver to Colorado Springs to Pueblo to serve your entertainment needs. Whether it's vinyl, CDs, DVDs, books, smoking accessories, or hundreds of other fun and fanciful items, Independent is ready and waiting to make your dreams come true. We are always buying, selling, and trading vinyl, CDs, books, and DVDs, so sell yours and buy ours. Independent Records Records and Videos, your entertainment headquarters. Check us out at beindependent.com or on Facebook.
High up in the Rockies is beautiful Frisco, Colorado. Medical Marijuana of the Rockies is a medical marijuana center with compassion for Colorado's medical patients. Looking for great meds grown organically in soil? You've come to the right place. Medical Marijuana of the Rockies is just off I-70 at exit 203. Check them out at the web at www.mmrockies.com. Their ever-changing strain and clone selection is updated on the website daily. When making a trip to the mountains, no matter the season, stop by Medical Marijuana of the Rockies. Make sure you say you heard about them on iCannabis Radio. You can call 970-668-MEDS to get more information. Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, your mountain source for meds.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
All right, we are back in the studio with Dr. Paul Bregman. During the break, Paul, you were saying that you wanted to talk more about some science. So I want to hear what did you have in mind? What were you thinking?
The aspect of with CBD and THC and just that cannabinoids are finally being talked about. Just an aside, by the way, I think maximum 15 curriculums in the 140 medical schools in the country, United States, only about 15 of them mention the endocannabinoid system within the curriculum.
That's actually more than I thought. So I'm almost, sadly, I'm impressed with 15. Actually.
So that's something. But the real thing that I wanted to talk about science-wise is that as we talk about CBD, we don't actually understand yet fully the mechanism, the metabolism of CBD.
Sure.
We know it's in the liver. We know it's according to a major pathway, the P450 metabolic pathway. Why this is interesting and why this is somewhat concerning is that there's, as I consult with an expert a pharmacologist, PhD, and she is informing me, and as I pass on to her different drug lists, there is drug interactions because of the different pathways for CBD being metabolized the same way that major drugs or other drugs are metabolized in the liver. So there may be some drug interactions that people have to be aware of.
Sure.
And that's something that I think the red card doctors. First of all, my opinion is that the red card doctors need to know a lot more
than they do.
Than they do, apart from
I would
applying
agree with you on that.
So I'd like to see more referrals back to the red card doctors to talk about what I'm talking about as well.
Right.
And so to be in touch with these type of things.
Sure.
Because with these type of things out there, people taking thyroid medicine, people taking tricyclic antidepressants, people taking over-the-counter things with ephedrine in them, and a whole list of things, Cymbalta, which is a tricyclic, all can be thrown off with or metabolized differently with the use of cannabis on a chronic use. So that's why the research is going to show more interaction. Like some people will say, you need to take half the opiates that I was taking when I was using cannabis. Well, this can happen with other medicine too, thyroid and so on and so forth.
And there are patients that are doing it, but they're doing it on their own. So they're kind of feeling it out for themselves without a doctor's supervision.
Well, nobody really knows. And that's why I'm bringing it up from the knowledge that I've gained from a pharmacology side to say you should be careful of this, monitor this more closely because of the liver. Everything goes back to the liver with regards to this. So if you're working with your doctor and your doctor knows about your cannabis use and you're on a host of medicines, it would be wise to have him to see, what pathway in the liver and to monitor your dosing, carefully with regards to that.
Right. But the big problem is there's no doctors out there that could even do that job right now. Really.
No, they could.
Well, there are doctors such as yourself.
No. But I'm just saying the idea is that a normal doctor could do blood work, let's say, on thyroid or something, or liver enzymes or something, to make sure that the levels of what he's giving you and that you're on anti-seizure medicine or something like that could be measured in the blood is not being affected by your chronic cannabis use.
Gotcha.
That you said, I've never had this discussion, and if you do have the discussion, you may want to consider not having it charted as well.
Right, sure.
Because it goes on and on and on.
Sure.
But that's a discussion that you have with your doctor.
That's interesting.
But there's more and more research coming out of the drug interactions, and probably it's not so great because people aren't rushing to the emergency room, but it's an emerging science that people should be aware of.
It is. There was one thing, I mean, I always like to applaud Dr. Sanjay Gupta for helping be, a spokesman. I mean, there are doctors that know way more on cannabis than he does. Obviously, you being one of them. But just because of who he is as a persona in the public eye, he's done an amazing job for helping make more and more people aware and creating mass acceptance of cannabis across the country. But he did make a statement, in the last, it was actually a written statement. I can't remember if he said it in the actual segment in Weed 2, but where he said, when all else other medications fail, cannabis is there and it should be an option. And to me, that's backwards. To me, because of the safe option of cannabis, that should be the first option. It should be one of the first options for a doctor to prescribe, because there's going to be way less side effects that are potentially dangerous. Well, actually no side effects in my opinion that are potentially dangerous. But, start somebody off on cannabis regimen first. And if that doesn't work, then look at the other harsher drugs out there.
Now that we have CBD, I think that certainly comes up into the order. The other thing is they're relying on what they know from double-blind, placebo type of studies.
Sure.
And if you have the cannabis, you don't have the side effects and you can get through with that and you know that it works for you, that's where it should be, and cannabis will come into that arena. CBD is to be studied, certainly THC more so as well. But if there is very good Western medicine and it works very well for a whole host of people, and now the elevation of cannabis should be at least on the same
absolutely.
on the same level.
Absolutely. Now we while we were talking about the science, our friend Mr. Sean Coleman just came in, so welcome. One of the things we wanted to get into was the banking issues. So because that's still a big issue. It's amazing that we have Eric Holder coming out telling the banks, go ahead, bank with the dispensaries, please do. It helps us. It and the banks are still saying, well, yeah, thanks for telling us that, but we're not listening. So, what's going on the banking front right now?
Before we do that, I want to just finish this thread that
please do.
Because you said something, two. Well, you said something that made me think of two things. And it's one of the reasons I did want to come down today, because I think folks should know about this bill that's being introduced by Senator Linda Newell and Senator Andy Kerr. And, I hate to drag them under the bus like this because, they're Democrats.
Which bill specifically are you talking about, for everybody out there?
So this is a bill that's going to create a drug endangered child standard.
Yeah.
And to make a very long story short, basically what the bill does is says that if someone decides, there are all these mandatory reporters, so, school teachers, physicians, what have you. So under this bill, something like your kid being at school saying, hey, my mom and dad like to smoke pot, could be justification for them to take your kids away. Yeah. And you end up with a felony child abuse conviction.
They could say that they like to drink alcohol, though, and that's
fine.
That's fine.
That's no big deal.
Even though alcohol is the primary reason for domestic violence across the country.
And
just checking.
And the reason why, because we had a meeting with Senator Kerr, to whose credit, he did at least sit down with us and try to discuss some of the problems with the bill. Linda Newell was unfortunately unavailable for that, but one of the things that we were talking about, and the folks from Drug Policy Alliance were talking about, were exactly this: that when you have these sorts of bills, and what happens is people don't tell their doctor what they're doing. And because they don't tell their doctor what they're doing, they don't get the correct information because the doctor doesn't have enough information. Right. So what this bill does is going to perpetuate the fact that people will not feel comfortable talking to their doctor about their cannabis use, whether it be medicinal, whether it be just for fun, whether it be spiritual, what have you. They won't tell their doctor about it, and they might be, missing out on remedies because the doctor doesn't have the complete information, because they don't want to get their kids taken away. And that's what this bill would create.
So is it child abuse if a child, say an 8-year-old child, goes into your refrigerator, a parent's refrigerator, opens up a bottle of beer and drinks it? Is that considered child abuse?
Not under this bill.
No.
But certainly, if you tell your doctor that you use cannabis, that could be grounds.
See, now here's the thing. Again, going back to what I said earlier, Paul, we're talking about regulating it like alcohol, but yet it's being regulated nothing like alcohol.
Look at the interest groups that we're talking about that are driving this.
Yeah.
This is a special interest group that thinks that they know best, whether it be homosexuality, whether it be black and white relationships, whether it be anything. You're talking about a fringe group that is driving this home through fear tactics and everything like that.
And I think you hit it exactly right, because, my general philosophy on things is that if you are not in any danger doing it yourself, you probably shouldn't be regulating it. So,
Absolutely.
I don't understand why men have so much say in how whether or not a woman can have an abortion.
I agree with you on that,
And
yeah.
unless you're prepared to give a bunch of blowjobs, I suggest you don't have an opinion about gay marriage. It's not up to you.
I guess so.
And certainly, when you look at these folks from Smart Colorado that are promoting these types of bills, this is, for them is about creating new customers for their private prison and treatment industrial complex. That's all this is. So, the audience listening at home, what they need to do is go to the Colorado General Assembly website, look up Andy Kerr, look up Senator Newell, and let them know that they oppose this bill and they should not even introduce it.
Are they
need
up
to do
for
that.
re-election this year?
Senator Kerr is up for re-election this year.
Danger.
It's one of those things. I say this as a Democrat, and I'm talking about two senators that are Democrats, and Andy Kerr, for full disclosure, is someone I consider a personal friend.
Sure.
They don't understand the politics of this. They don't understand that this is not something that excites the Democratic base so that we turn out for Senator Udall. This is something that says, why am I voting for Democrats? How is my life better now that I can't talk to my doctor about my cannabis use?
Well, to me, it's an invasion of privacy, really. I mean, look, it's like to stop telling me how to live my life. Yes, I have a child on the way. I'm going to be a responsible adult when it comes to a lot of different substances, whether it's cannabis usage, whether I'm educating on alcohol usage or anything. I'm going to keep poisons away from my kid. It's the same thing. That's my responsibility as a parent, though. Imagine for a moment they started regulating where you can put pesticides or cleaning products in your home. Hey, if my kid gets in there and drinks some some Drano or whatever,
Well,
that would be considered. Shouldn't that be child
But
abuse?
aren't there laws on the books that already are there protecting the child
Right, of course. For one.
from medicines and drugs, et cetera, et cetera?
For one, we already have a child abuse statute, but this is the low-level information that the lawmakers have.
Mm-hmm.
This, you're talking to lawmakers about this, and this will be, and I'm saying not who said this to protect them because it would make they're going to seem so ignorant. But what was said was, well, what if a kid just was to sit down and eat an entire marijuana plant? I'm like, well, they might puke a little bit.
But yeah, well,
They can't
get high from it,
because they don't understand that.
They don't understand that.
They don't understand that you can't get high from touching a marijuana
But again,
plant.
they're listening to Smart Colorado telling them all
Right.
these things in their ear, and they're listening to them without going to somebody like Dr. Paul Bregman here and getting actual physicians to say, no, this is what cannabis can do to you, and this is how it can do it to you.
No, so Sean, when you present the counter argument to Smart Colorado and who is saying cannabis, child abuse, that's the line that they're drawing.
Right.
And you're saying, wait a minute, we have this, and this common sense things.
Right.
How do they look at you? Are there constituents?
So-
there are constituents or not Smart Colorado? Are there voters who vote for them? All Smart Colorado people?
Well, if the same way that I would always say when I'm at the Capitol, I'm representing the 55% of the voters that voted for Amendment 64. I suppose in the same way they can say they represent the 45% who didn't. That said, with these types of legislations where this is clearly about a political victory for a archaic worldview, we just have to draw a fine line. I mean, this is not let's make this bill better. This bill must not.
No, this bill needs to go. We have to go
But
on a
what
quick
does-
break, gentlemen. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
So let me just do a quick word from our sponsor, and let's get right back into this conversation, okay? So also new from our new sponsor, Incredibles, are gummies. Incredibles new gummies will come 2 in a pack. Each 2-pack is going to contain 100 milligrams of the finest medicine around. What's more, each 50 milligram infused gummy will be fortified with 100 milligrams of vitamin C for an extra healthful kick. It's available in black cherry, green apple, grape, orange, strawberry, blue raspberry, and strawberry banana. Gummies, new from Incredibles. Same great flavors, brand new shape, and now fortified with vitamin C. Also, my screen just went out there. Also, try all of their other great chocolate bar flavors. So Incredible bars are all at your local dispensaries. Boulder bars, those are actually my favorites. They make great s'mores. Monkey bars, blueberry crisp bars, strawberry cough crunch bars, peach dream bars, peanut butter Buddha bars, and the famous Mile High and Mile Higher bars. Ask for them by name and have an Incredibles day. All right, so we're back for this is a good little conversation. I'm glad you came in here, Sean. It's really good.
It's actually convenient for me to get down here today because this week the House is considering the long bill, which is the state's budget, and so since our industry doesn't need corporate welfare as part of its business model, when the checks are being handed out at the Capitol, for us it's kind of like a vacation week because we're not at the state Capitol asking for handouts. But
who is asking for handouts out of curiosity?
Every other industry.
So the fracking industry asking for handouts?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
They've got line items. There's not a single line item that says here's where we're going to invest in Colorado's cannabis industry. They're spending our money. That they definitely do.
Oh no, they're happy to spend our money. Yeah.
So. But I wanted to just because Paul and I were having kind of a sidebar conversation here, and and I think it's an important sidebar conversation, in the sense that for one, with these types of policies, this is not about serious policy making. This is about politicians who don't understand the politics and don't understand that this is a policy change that the people want.
Yeah.
And one of the things that alcohol prohibition had in its favor that we don't have, which is a good thing, and only actually is more of a sign that cannabis is a better part of people's lives, a general part of people's lives, is that the negative externalities of the policy prohibition itself and under alcohol were obvious to everybody. Like if you were walking down the street in Chicago, you were getting shot at whether you were drinking beer or not.
Sure.
But the negative externalities of cannabis prohibition, I can't get an effective treatment because I'm not telling my doctor that I use cannabis. The state's not getting the $14 million of economic activity that I assure you was going on the entire time. I'm going to be at risk of having my kids taken away from me because of a capricious bill. These are invisible negative externalities. You don't see these things in the general public. So what tends to happen, and we're seeing this now that we've gone into post-prohibition, is that popularity is going up. It's spiking because now all the things that used to be invisible are now visible. Like people are like, wait a second, there was $14 million lying around. It's like, wait a second, Democrats are saying they want to take my kids away from me for using that something that's legal. And so I think what's really important is, number one, again, if you're listening about this and you care about this issue, contact Senator Newell and contact Senator Kerr and contact Senate President Morgan Carroll right now and make sure this bill doesn't even get introduced in the first place. But more importantly, the marijuana electorate has to go out and vote this fall, and we have to be voting for people who are right on our issue, regardless of what letter they happen to have behind their name.
Well, I think this is a really good opportunity for the citizens of Colorado who are pro-cannabis, and any of you out there, please inform this to your friends. This is a midterm election. Midterm elections historically are more attended by Republicans than they are by Democrats, first of all. But that said, I mean, cannabis does cross party lines.
Absolutely.
But this is a chance for us as a collective group to kind of show how much weight we can have by, we're going to be working on doing a campaign. There is going to be somebody coming out to oppose Hickenlooper.
Right.
And I already know who it is. I can't share who it is yet, but I'm very excited about who it is.
Right.
And as soon as that announcement is made, we're going to be fully behind this person, and we're going to do everything we can to whether he could beat Hickenlooper or not remains to be seen. But I want to put the fear of God into him at least, and let him realize and kind of wake up to the fact that hey, cannabis is more popular than Hickenlooper is. First of all,
I mean, there's just a data point on that. Amendment 64 got 1.3 million votes. Hickenlooper got 916,000 votes. So he's already
400,000.
So yeah, he's at a 400,000 vote deficit to begin with. But also, let's look at the race as it stands today. Right, you have no real Republican nominee. It's hard to tell who's going to come out of that.
Right.
But the front runners are all polling within 2-3 points of Hickenlooper. And let's not forget what happened in the last gubernatorial election. Tancredo came in second with 37% of the vote as an independent. You know why? Because 36% of Colorado voters are registered independents.
Yep.
So this idea that the governor's got a clear sail to re-election is not correct. I think he's going to regret not having embraced Colorado's cannabis industry the way he's embraced Colorado's craft brewing industry. Just a data point there. He's putting tabs in the governor's mansion, celebrating 5,000 jobs. Well, since 1979, we have 8,000. 5,000. So the industry's been in Colorado since 1979, but today they have 5,000 people. The cannabis industry, as we know it today, has been in Colorado since 2010. We have 8,500 employees, 600 licensees compared to their 200.
So we've employed 60% more people than craft breweries have, and we've only been around for just a few years.
And we generate the annual revenue in a month.
Yeah.
So
and we're hiring on a regular basis.
Right.
I mean, that was the thing. We had a job fair that we attended just a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
And there were 1,200 people there flying in from all over the country.
So let's say that the cannabis voter, the people that would actually vote on this issue, let's say that's 3% of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
So if this candidate that you're not telling us about get 3% of the vote, which they'll get 10 or 20 or whatever it is because it's Colorado, and again, if they got just the votes that belong to the independents, they should get 36%.
Yep.
So they're going to get 3% or 4% or whatever it is. Well, then Hickenlooper can't win.
Yeah.
It's impossible to win. And you know what that does for this movement? It sends a clear message to elected officials that at minimum you cannot be anti-marijuana and keep your job in this country anymore, even if you're a Democrat. That takes the national movement from being a 10-year outlook to a 5-year outlook, because all of a sudden everyone's going to remember what happened to John Hickenlooper because he was on the wrong side of marijuana policy.
Yeah. I can already see the campaign.
And that's a local, and that's a huge shift as you talk about. But people have to realize that within the next 18 months to 24 months, there are probably going to be 38 states that are going to have either medical and or legalization. As well,
and it'll be reclassified by that point.
And 30, we'll see. But 38 states are there, plus another foreign country with it as well. So you have the impact of that. But still, you still have the federal government when we talk about the banking issue not being resolved, when you have and the chairman of the banking committee not bringing it to the fore because he's not from a state that has to that is involved with it. That's a simple political move,
yes, it is.
right there. And so that's until that's settled. I'm a friend of mine who got kicked out of his bank because he was one step removed, and the bank was so conservative that still stuff goes on.
No. I just had one of my clients today. Their bank got changed, and that happens regularly.
And the DEA statement, the bank laughed at them. They said, DEA, that doesn't mean anything that you're going to outlook at us or do anything with us. We take our orders from the FDIC. The FDIC is changed by acts of Congress. That's when we'll make our move.
And there are moves in Congress to do something on that.
But they're just moves. It's talk. It's talk. And talk's cheap.
This is the biggest do-nothing Congress in the history of
No, but I'm
Congress.
saying, but with regards to this banking issue, this is holding back. But despite all of these things are moving ahead.
They are. Right. Well, even more of a problem, in my opinion, than the banking issue is the IRS tax code for 280E. I actually think that's a bigger problem. I understand the banking issue, and I do think that, yes, that absolutely needs to be fixed. But there's no reason why the tax code shouldn't be taken away from this as well. And that will happen as soon as it gets reclassified. I think it should be happening before it even gets reclassified, just a separate issue.
Here's what I'm saying that to compare the two, that where the banking issue is an issue of public safety, it's an imminent issue of public safety, and it's an issue of the financial services industry behaving in a way that they're putting their fight with Congress over regulation ahead of the public safety is shameful. The tax code provisions are just simply un-American.
Un-American.
I mean, I don't know whether you agree with cannabis or not, how anyone can suffer this. I mean, this idea that that is perfectly acceptable for the federal government to take 70, 80, perhaps all of your money in taxation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, first of all, like all the three of us, anybody in the studio, all five of us sitting here in the studio, pay more taxes than Apple.
Right.
I mean, actually, out of my pocket, I pay more taxes than Apple does. Now, yes, they probably pay accountants more to save them that money so they don't have to pay any taxes. But really, I mean, and there's other huge companies that don't pay any taxes whatsoever, and the average citizen pays more than these huge corporations. And then you look at the cannabis industry and how much they have to pay in taxes. I mean, it affects ancillary businesses like ours. We're a magazine. General standard tax deduction for marketing for your company is 30%. Well, they're not allowed to deduct that 30% for their expenses on marketing. Right. And because of that, we have less people advertising with us as a company, which means that I'm able to employ less people because as soon as that take goes away, I'm able to hire more people because I'm going to have more advertisers coming in, and then I'm employing more people. So there's a big effect that goes on with this tax code 280E.
What's so interesting about it is that for these prohibition hangover policies, the people that continue to support them obviously are prohibitionists.
Yeah.
And it's so counterintuitive to their cause.
Sure.
Because American entrepreneurship can trump bad American ideology every day, as it's doing in this industry. But all you're doing is creating for the people who do survive this period and this industry's growth. When that gets unleashed,
Huge.
When that capital gets unleashed, they are going to have created the newest class of billionaires.
Absolutely.
People that were just going to be, making the profitability of the average liquor store are going to be billionaires because of these hangovers of tax policy were designed to make people go out of business. Are going to make them billionaires, and so it's one of those things where if the people who remain prohibitionists would actually just think about things from the perspective of good public policy as opposed from their own ideology, we would actually have way less regulations of bank accounts and an equitable tax code, because that's how you put people out of business. Give them competition.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, guys, we flew through that second half of the show. We could actually wrap this guy up, but. I definitely want to. Obviously, Sean, you've been on it quite a few times. I'm sure we'll have you on again. Dr. Paul Bregman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's always illuminating when you come on and give us a lot more information on the science of cannabis. I love learning something about cannabis every day, and you're one of the few people I feel that can teach me something on that side.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I want to thank you both for coming on, and we will be back next week. And I think, who do we have on next week, Chris? Is that our Bongathon friends? We got Bongathon. One of my favorite shows to do every year is our Bongathon guest, because it's always a hoot. So tune in.
You guys need to do very soon a vaporizer sampler, taste testing, and I definitely need to help participate with that.
Oh, okay. So
I've got a lot of opinions about.
You do, okay. I love how serious he is. Really, we should do a vaporizer testing
it's
here
really
and
important,
sample. Yeah, kind of review some vaporizers.
Oh, and there's a vaporizer out now the size of that competes with the PAX. That's
Really?
better than the PAX. It was
What?
invented by a
No.
Microsoft. It's just a different mechanism of
Do you know what it's called?
a vaporizer. No, not I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's exactly that kind of thing. I can't not know about that. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Imagine-
It compete, and it's an airflow one like a volcano, except it's handheld.
It's handheld. I think I know who you're talking about. I
forget the name of it.
This is
Out
the
of
kind
California, though, I think it
this
is,
is
right?
the kind of important information that if I don't have it, what am I going to do?
Screw policy, screw banking issues. Let's talk about vaporizers next
Look,
week.
it's an election year. Legislating is over. We need to
Well-
talk about what's really important.
Well,
here.
the things
yeah,
also
I
that are coming down the pipe, there's going to be testing changes,
Yes.
labeling changes,
Yes.
packaging changes.
Yeah, there's only so
These
much we
things
can
are
cover in an
coming.
hour. It's crazy, but
no,
you're right.
No, but I'm saying these things are coming down the road
That's right.
within
They are.
within the world.
Yes, they are. You're right. So, as always, tune in to us every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We always have a lot of fun in here, and the guests have been better and better every time we do this show. So, for all of you listening out there, thanks for listening. Until next time, peace, love, and hempiness.